Sabina, welcome back to the Mindful Podcast.
Yeah, thanks so much. I'm honoured to be asked back.
I want to start with a story.
Okay.
I was driving from Cork back to Dublin. And I was on a part of the motorway that I don't know particularly well. And I was listening to a podcast. And the presenter was talking about a medical treatment that he'd had, where his normal doctor had advised him to get shoulder surgery.
Okay.
That he would eventually need surgery on his shoulder. And then an alternative kind of medic said, hey, have you thought about having stem cells injected into your shoulder instead?
Okay.
So the story he was talking about is that he did that and his shoulder healed up and he didn't need the surgery. And at that point, I'd been listening to the podcast for a very long time and I thought, I'll take a break. So I hit stop on the podcast and about 50 yards further up the road, a field became visible on the left where I was driving. And in that field was one of those giant trailers that they park in random fields.
Yeah.
That,
like off the back of a truck. There'd be a truck
exactly,
at the front of it.
yeah. So the back of a truck and there's some kind of advertising on it.
Yeah.
And you wonder how the hell they managed to get that thing into the field in the first place. And on this truck, the ad was a picture of a guy smiling and in quotes, in huge letters was, I avoided surgery by using stem cells.
Yeah.
And then I drove past it and I was like,
holy shit.
Am I in some kind of weird alternate universe? Like I've heard of manifestation or manifesting.
Yeah.
That to me seemed like the clearest example of sort of accidental instant manifestation. Or was it just a big fat coincidence?
No, I don't believe it was a coincidence. I do believe it was manifesting in the form that I talk about in my book. So essentially, our brain is bombarded with billions of bits of information every day, okay?
Yeah.
And essentially it has to filter in what's important. The priority is anything to do with saving your life, survival, keeping you alive. It'll also sort of filter in unusual things like you're driving along in traffic, noticing nothing, and then suddenly like 10 Jeeps with a radio station go by, because that's unusual. And also things that are relevant to you, things that your brain has taken from your life experience or from, anything that you've articulated or in the past, anything that your brain figures is worthy of notice. So again, driving into a car park, you might say, oh shit, that's my ex's car. I'm getting out of here, right? So those things happen all the time. And in the context of manifesting, basically, anyone listening, I'm sure, is familiar, in manifesting, people talk about attracting, putting it out there to the universe, your goal that you want to manifest. And, vibrations go out into the universe and the universe vibrates and sends that information back. Now, that's not the kind of manifesting I'm talking about. I'm talking about that in the context of manifesting, if you identify a goal and you have great clarity about what it is you want, basically, you have given your brain clarity. That activates a network in your brain called the salience network. And that network is responsible for filtering in the information that's relevant. So what will happen during manifesting is you'll start to see opportunities that you didn't know were there. Now, in your instance, what it is that information is relevant. It obviously really resonated with you when you were listening to it. And you kind of went, oh my God, I'm sure in your head, you kind of went, oh my God, isn't that amazing? No surgery, stem cells, where's science going to? And your brain you probably passed that truck umpteen times before. I don't know how often you go up and down to Cork, but you probably passed it before. But it was not remotely relevant. But now it's relevant.
I agree, but like if I
want it to be magical.
But in the like, if I'd been listening to the podcast and he said I like burgers, and then I saw an ad for McDonald's or something, you go, okay, because they're fairly common.
Yeah, I mean, and they're relevant to you because you're hungry and you might want to go, and pull in at the next burger.
But I had never even heard of an ad. It was such a random ad for for stem cell treatment. It's not something that you'd see every day.
No, it sounds amazing though.
But I saw literally just as I hit pause on this podcast.
Well, you know, I mean, the coincidence part is
Yeah.
that you happen to be near it. You honestly don't believe that suddenly, you know, the universe plonked a truck there for you to see.
I don't know. Like, I know you love woo. You love magic. Mysterious woo crystals. I know that's you, Sabina.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's why you wrote the book, The Neuroscience of Manifesting. Do you know what? I love the fact that you don't poo-poo all of that stuff. You don't just in the opening page of your book, I'm a neuroscientist, that stuff is a load of unqualified waffle, so forget everything and I'm going to explain what's really happening with your brain. What I like is that you almost present it like the neuroscience is a layer that can sit on top of whatever entranceway into the world of manifesting that you've liked up until now.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like. It doesn't make the reader feel foolish if they've engaged with anything like the law of attraction or, you know, feeling a little bit of magic or the divine intervention or the universe working in mysterious ways or my angels or whatever way. You don't write that off. Now, I know that's not your core belief system, but the fact that it sits on top is reassuring and it doesn't make the reader, as I say, feel a little bit foolish.
Yeah, well, I mean, delving back to my past before I went to university, anyone who knows me knows I didn't go till I was, you know, in my early 40s. I read way before The Secret, you know, there was Louise Hay and there was Tony Robbins and there was Deepak Chopra. I read all of those, the 7 spiritual laws of success. I used to manifest parking spaces in town. Do you know, I did all that.
I love that.
You know, I read the law of attraction, you know, and to be honest, you know, at that time, because I hadn't gone to university, I'd left school at 16, I had assumed that once a book is written like that, somebody has fact-checked it, you know, for the science, but they don't, you know, they don't. And that's why actually it's really important that you look at people's credentials, you know, and that's one reason why I actually early on in the book say, look, I have these credentials, you know, I am a qualified psychologist and I am a neuroscientist and I did a PhD and the human brain interests me and actually I also say at the beginning, you know, I became a psychologist and a neuroscientist because I'm fascinated with the human brain and our behaviour and how they influence each other. But I also am, the reason I no longer work in a university doing academic research is that it matters much more to me to make a difference to people in their day-to-day life rather than have this magnificent H index, which is how, you know, scientists rate, you know, each other based on how many academic publications they have. I get my buzz out of making a difference to other people. I want to give them knowledge about their brain so that they can better understand themselves and achieve their true potential. And there's huge similarities with my goal and the goal of people who work in the manifesting space. You know, they want to help people, make their dream, manifest their dreams. And so do I. We just go about it in different ways. But I kind of felt, you know, there is woo out there. People are vulnerable. Some people are vulnerable. It's, you know, in the early part of the book, I talk about how, you know, we don't all start on the same page. I think that's a very important thing in terms of manifesting, because I think an awful lot of people feel, you know, if they don't manage to manifest whatever it is they want, that they're a failure. They're somehow doing something wrong. But we all start our manifesting journey in at different stages and paces and with different genetic history, environmental history, life history. They all influence how your manifesting journey
and sometimes
will go.
That cruelty can be inbuilt into some of the doctrine, I think, in terms of, you know, I got cancer. Oh, what did I do wrong that I manifested that for myself?
Yes.
You know, so it's my fault.
Yeah.
You know, or somebody close to me died. How did I manifest that?
Yes.
You know, or I lost my job. I'm terrible at manifesting. This is all my fault. And
shit happens.
Yeah.
You know, shit happens. And that's the truth of it. That's life. But I think if you understand how your brain works, if you understand how you manifest your reality, which we do, that will help you to build resilience when those kind of things happen. I think that's where a lot of the manifesting practices can be helpful in that. You know, they help you to be resilient in the face of change, because manifesting is all about, you know, wanting to change your reality, change your future, change your brain. And I think that's important. And I think in the beginning of the book, though, I do talk about, which I found fascinating. I mean, a lot of this research, I mean, this was different to the other books I wrote, you know, in that for me, this was really delving into manifesting, and then it was actually delving into other research that shows, oh, this is what's going on in your brain. So some of the stuff I found was like, oh my God, that's really exciting.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just a case of me relating knowledge I already knew.
Yeah. Well, it is exciting. It's exciting to read, and it's accessible. And like I said, whichever point of view you're coming from, whether you are in the more The Secret type of thing, law of attraction, Abraham Hicks world, or if you just want to know the neuroscience, I want everybody to listen right now, because we're going to dive into a bit of the roadmap that you set out in the book. Obviously, people can get far more detail in the book, but we'll try and get as much of that info to people now. So what I like is that you break it into, I guess we could call it the 5 main C's. So the first one is compassion.
Yes. So a lot of manifesting books, and I read a lot of them when I was doing this book, really begin with, at a point, you know, about gain clarity about what you want. And that is really critical, really important. However, I think there's foundational steps.
Yeah, this surprised me. And it was really reassuring when I saw it. The first one is compassion. And I was like, wow, because like I said, a lot of the time, this manifesting thing can actually cause us to be hard on ourselves for not instantly manifesting the things that other books are telling us that we should be able to do. So just take us through why compassion and elements like self-kindness are so important. Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, we're so self-critical.
Yeah.
You know, I say in the book that self-criticism, and this was a learning curve for me as well, doing this book, you know, those kind of things and things that I'm working on now, is to be less self-critical. We have this constant voice in our head that's constantly sort of monitoring what we do. And if you think about it, and I've spoken to people now at talks, when I give talks kind of around the book, okay, imagine your friend has a new boyfriend, new girlfriend or whatever, and that person is saying to them, oh my God, you're useless. You did that wrong again. Why did you open your big mouth in that situation? You shouldn't have said that. That's absolutely ridiculous. You're always the same. You keep making the same mistakes. Something that we say to ourselves all the time. You'd say to that person, that friend, God, is that really a healthy relationship you're in? You know, they keep putting you down all the time. They criticize your every move. And that's what we do that to ourselves all the time. And the thing is, you know, when you're being self-critical, it's the same as if someone else is being critical to you. You know, it activates the stress response in your body, which is not good, puts you into a state of anxiety, etc. And I mean, a lot of us, particularly perfectionists, I would sense that you might be a perfectionist. I was definitely a perfectionist, and definitely as a child encouraged to be so. I mean, I remember the teacher in school holding up my copybook and said, look, this is how your copybook should be. You know, they're so nice and neat and perfect. She even dots the ones in her 1979 or whatever. But you know what I mean? I was brought up to think that, you know, aiming for perfect is a really good thing to do, but it's not. I've learned, you know, perfectionism is a real recipe for failure, because you're never going to be perfect and you're going to think you fail all the time. And for me, I struggle to learn when good enough is good enough. Why did I go off on that perfectionist?
Well, I guess it's one of the things that we beat ourselves up about.
Yeah. So people who are perfectionists tend to think being critical of ourselves, analysing what we do, is a way to improve our performance next time and a way to motivate ourselves.
Holding ourselves to account.
Oh, to a higher standard.
Yeah.
No, you did that wrong. I'm sure after a show you come off and go, no, that didn't quite hit where it should hit, you know, whatever. But basically what the research shows is that self-criticism does not motivate us and it does not improve our performance. Self-affirmation does. Self-compassion does. Believing in yourself, being kind to yourself, actually motivate us more towards our goals. And actually, I think what's really what I found fascinating about self-compassion was there's loads of benefits to self-compassion. I kind of list them off in the book, but I think the one key one to talk about here is that in terms of manifesting later on one of the other C's, I would say, keep asking yourself, why do you want that? I mean, you see it all the time on the internet, manifest £10 million tomorrow or whatever. Why do you want that? Just keep asking why till you kind of get to a why where there's no further answer. And usually if you're human like everybody else, you will come down to, I want to be happy. That kind of really is that kind of fundamental thing. And one of the benefits, one of the byproducts of self-compassion is happiness and contentment. People who are compassionate towards themselves are much happier and much more content with life than those of us who aren't.
Yeah.
So that's a real bonus. And
like you say, we have one rule book for how, for instance, we would talk to our children. We would know encouragement works, constant scolding doesn't, blah, blah, blah. Except when we turn it inwards, it's harsh.
No,
and sometimes it's the echoed voices of people in our surroundings when we were growing up.
So that's exactly what I was going to say to you. That's the thing. Self-criticism is learned. It's a learned behaviour, which is really positive news, because if you learned how to do it, you can learn how to be compassionate. You can learn, how to treat yourself with greater kindness. Not going to be easy, they're ingrained patterns, but you can do it one step at a time. Next time you say something critical to yourself in your head, go, actually, hold on a second. And affirmations are brilliant, which are, a common tool used in manifesting. Positive affirmations are great. Irish people sometimes find it hard to do those kind of things, except my husband, and I've said this before, he just looks in the mirror in the morning and goes, "You're fucking gorgeous." And he goes out the door. He's just always done that. He's never read a manifesting book in his life. He's never read any of my books, but he just does it. And, and it works. He has a good sense of self-confidence about himself.
Yeah.
But affirmations, if you kind of find them too hard, even just reframing whatever it is you said, something like, "Oh, you're a bloody idiot, you made a fool of yourself, you got upset at work, you started to bloody cry, that's stupid." Say to yourself, "I got upset, that's okay." Do you know, and that's without having to say, an affirmation that you might feel awkward with.
Well,
you
again,
can kind of work up to them.
What would you say to your kid? You'd go, "You got a bit upset there.
It's okay.
It's all right.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It is okay." Do you know?
What I like about the idea of the self-kindness, self-compassion, and why you brought it up first, it's a bit like clearing your path.
Yes.
Before you even embark on the manifestation journey, there's no point doing it if you have a load of clutter in the way.
Yeah.
And certainly, I know when I'm trying to be creative, when I'm trying to carve this new path that I'm on, I really have to keep an eye on the natural roadblocks that I throw in front of
Your
me. And
limiting
that is
beliefs.
perfectionism, avoidance, self-criticism, worried that things won't work out exactly the way I want. Those are my roadblocks. So I work on them really hard.
Good, yeah.
To try and remove them. So then I can just get on with the things that I want to do.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And that's why if you build any house, if you're doing any building, it makes sense to do site investigations, to delve in underneath the house, see if there's any problems, see if there's any things that are going to cause problems up the way. And you may find there's things you have to work around, like we'll say perfectionism. Like, so in manifesting, you're doing your self-investigation. And so you might find, well, look, perfectionism is so deeply ingrained in me. That's something that I might actually just have to work around, instead of saying, "Oh, I won't be a perfectionist anymore." You can turn around and say, "Well, no, hold on a second. Maybe I'm going to set myself limits and say, well, you're only going to work on this for X amount of time. And then that will be my new perfect." Do you know what I mean? You can kind of change up your way, but there's things, and it's exactly that kind of things that you might have to modify. Like, we're all naturally biased towards the negative. And so, modifying that by actually trying to throw in a positive comment in your head or whatever for every negative that you notice, actively trying to notice positives in the world around you. You can change those. So yes, I feel that work is foundational, really, really seriously foundational.
So,
otherwise you'll just fall into all the same traps you've always fallen into,
And we get in our own way.
Yeah.
Connection.
Yes.
So is this the vehicle to self-compassion, or where does connection come in?
I think connection that I talk about in the book is understanding and connecting with your, I don't know, to throw out a word, authentic self, your true self. I mean, and I do talk about this in the book. Often we don't know who we really are, because, and the way I explain it in the book is, you know, your brain has created your sense of self from multiple bits of information from across your lifespan, huge amount of them from childhood. And that information has never been validated. It's never been tested. Some of it may never have been true. Some of it may have been true in the past, is no longer true. And that's what you're kind of carrying around with you. And we have this sense that our sense of self, that there is an eye behind the eyes that is unchangeable. It's just who I am. How many times do we kind of almost use that opt-out? It's just who I am. I can't help it, whatever.
I always see an interesting moment if I'm with a group of people and I'm doing a particular meditation, and I say, you know, this is an opportunity for us to take off the hats that we wear every day. So remove parent, carer, colleague, supervisor, manager, whatever, the teacher, whatever that happens to be in your life, whatever hats you wear. And you're taking them away, and you're just connecting to that part of yourself that's just you, that was there when you were a kid. Mm-hmm. And some people you can see, oh, I think I'm there. And on other people's faces, they're like,
what the hell are you talking about?
Who the hell is that person? Yeah. And you can see them struggling a little bit to kind of even conceptualize that there may be a deeper sense of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we're so busy sort of being who we're supposed to be, or, you know, following, you know, whatever path. And often you wake up in your 40s and you go, how the fuck did I get here?
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I used to tutor medical students in Trinity, you know, on behavioural science, and they're doing their degree. And I would often ask them why they became a doctor. I could count on less than one hand the amount of them who became doctors because they wanted to be doctors, if you know what I mean, that they wanted the job. You know, oh, well, I had the brains, I could get 600 points, my parents wanted me to be, or whatever. Oh, it's a really prestigious job to have, people will respect me. All sorts of different reasons, except that sort of passion, motivation. So what I try to say to people is, you know, in this book, and I'm not a manifesting guru, I'm a neuroscientist that wants to really help people, and I think manifesting works. And here's the way it'll work. And if you understand how your brain works, then you'll really kind of go, oh, this is what I need to do. And I just ask people to sort of, look, make an appointment with yourself. Take time out. Particularly look at the limiting beliefs. You know, I'm not good enough. I'd never be able to do that, whatever. And see if you can trace it back to where it came from. And you'll often find it came from one instance. I can still remember, it still hurts. We had a substitute teacher in primary school. I'd say maybe I was 8. And she actually lived in the house on the road behind our house. We lived in a housing estate. And you know, when you're a kid, like, your teacher is God. Do you know? You know what I mean? You just want to be. Well, I always wanted to be perfect, and I often was. And I still. That's another thing I remember that sticks with me. You know, I couldn't understand one time the girls in the class were kind of pretending to lick lollipops because they called me a lick because I was always nice to the teacher. Do you know? I'd jump up to open the door. That's just who I was. I wanted to please. I now know backwards. Well, I was made to please at home. You know, that was the only way you kind of, the love was very conditional. So you had to behave in a particular way. And so that probably was just to carry on. Anyway, it's a very long-winded story. She had 2 daughters. And they used to come into our class for the last half hour of the day because they were in junior school and we were in the little senior school or whatever. And I remember meeting them in the lane one day and being delighted, oh, I might be able to play with the teachers' kids. Do you know, that was kind of an exciting thing to me. And they told me, said, no, we're not allowed to play with you because Mummy says you're a notice box. I can't tell you how that devastated me. And the very fact that here I am at this age, I still remember it. I still feel the hurt of it. And like that's mad, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, do you know what I mean? That same teacher actually used to punch the back off girls in schools who didn't know their maths. She was horrible. Why should I care? What she said matters. And I think, I hope sort of in sharing that story, like, it encouraged people to go back to those stories and go, shit, why have I carried that with me for so long? Do I even respect that? Because most of the information
before you became a scientist, you were an actress.
I was a notice box.
So you were a professional notice box. So you were like, screw you, I'm going to make money out of this. Yeah.
It was my natural thing. You told me before when you were on my podcast that, when you were at school, you were just the sort of natural comedian and you sort of went on to do it. For me, it's funny. People don't see the relationship with acting. For me, I was always interested in people, in human behaviour. Why do you do that? What happens if you do this? If you do this, does that change that? And again, probably I can trace some of that, back to my family, not knowing who we really were as children. Because I remember one of my brothers saying that to me. He said, I have no idea who I am. We just had to be whoever they wanted us to be. The good child, the perfect child, the achiever child. I definitely became the achiever child. My dad was disappointed the others didn't do well academically. So that I said, oh, I can do that. That's easy for me. And he always used to say, oh, you have my brains, Sabina, no one else got my brains. Do you know, they're all things that have completely shaped my life.
Yeah.
So we have those. For me, it's worked out good. I love what I do. I am doing something that I adore, but a lot of people are doing stuff that they don't really love. Just start interrogating those things. And the thing is, your brain has just created this story of you. You can recreate that story. You are the author of your own life. You're the author of your own future. And you can start rewriting those stories. It's not easy. This is the one thing that I think is a misconception around manifesting. You can rewire your brain. You can harness neuroplasticity to change those stories and change those limiting or negative patterns of behavior. You can change them up, put in more positive beliefs about yourself, etc. But that takes time and it takes work. It's not going to happen the first time you do it, and it's not going to happen overnight. And neuroplasticity doesn't work that way. It takes time and effort, but the journey is worth it.
It's one of the things I do really like about the book as well, is that you say manifesting is active.
Yes.
This is not passive. This is not you waking up in the morning and getting out of bed and say, I'm just going to be high vibe today. I'm going to be on my highest flying disc and the lotto is going to come to me.
No,
it doesn't work like that. If you're carrying around the same baggage that's been stopping you from and getting in your way from discovering who you are and becoming who you'd like to be, then saying you're going to be high vibe
Yeah.
So it is active and it takes work.
No, and I think that's the biggest misconception, and I think that's why so many fellow scientists have dissed it as woo and have called it pseudoscience. But when I delved into it, actually, in fairness to the scientists, there are so many misconceptions out there about what it is, that what they're actually dissing is that misconception that manifesting is passive, that it's just wishful thinking and there's no action involved, and they're absolutely right. And you see, the thing about visualization is it absolutely works. It really does work. And the thing about manifesting is it encourages visualization beyond the visual. It encourages you to imagine what it feels like, to imagine the emotional part, whatever, imagine what it tastes like really, really, embed yourself in that future. And I think that's really, really important for a number of reasons. One of them is you might actually discover, oh shit, I don't like that future. Or, that's not quite, if you really think it through. But the other thing is visualizing, you get this you visualize your end goal, right? So you're going to be on stage and the audience are going to absolutely love it. That's your end goal in this particular instance. So that's what you then have to do, is work backwards from that to figure out what steps do I need to take to make that happen. Okay? And I think that's really good. That's the active part, but that's what your brain is brilliant at. That's what's called an inverse problem. If you want to get into mathematics, the end result. How do you get there? And the brain is brilliant at solving inverse problems. And so you visualizing that, will allows your brain to start to figure out those steps that you need to take to get towards that goal. And then that's the action you have to take,
Let's move on to change, because it's another important part of your book. You say manifesting is fundamentally about change. It's about changing your thinking, your behavior, your reality, and your brain.
Yes.
Change is a part, I think, that throws up issues for people in that we can desperately want change. We can want to get out of our situation. We want to be with someone else. We want to, not be with the person we're with.
Yeah.
We want to be in a different job. We want to be richer, have more free time, whatever it is. But at the same level, we don't want to change.
Absolutely.
Because it's scary. So can we truly manifest if we're afraid of change?
No, I think manifesting is about change. To manifest just means to make something happen. I think change is really, really interesting. Excuse me. On the one hand, your brain needs change. It needs new experiences. If you look at your brain as a prediction machine that is constantly predicting, what will happen next. And that's from a survival perspective. Do you know that kind of way? If you hear a loud noise, kind of you jump or whatever. The thing is as well, sorry, just to say this, that manifesting is just making things happen. It's changing your reality. That sounds really fluffy and out there. But we manifest our reality, we change our reality pretty much all day, every day. Like I changed my reality. This morning, I was in Cavan, running around the garden trying to get my dogs to come in so that I could leave to come down to you. And I took
a lot of people
action.
would say if they lived in Cavan, they'd want to change their reality as well.
Not in my house. I manifested the most amazing house. Anyway,
yes, I've seen your house. It looks very beautiful.
But so my brain had to figure out, well, hold on, I've got to be in studio with Dermot by 12 o'clock. I had to figure out my plan. I had to look at my Google Maps and figure out what my journey is, what time I need to leave, etc. And so I'm here. I have a different reality. I didn't magic it, but I did manifest it. I made it happen through action. I didn't sit at home on my sofa and go, I'd love to be interviewed by Dermot for a podcast. And here I am. Do you know, but that's actually what it is. So, and a lot of the time, the reality that we manifest, our life, our future, which could be tomorrow, which is tomorrow, whatever, we do so unconsciously. And it is influenced by our biases, our limiting beliefs, our habits, heuristics, where the brain sort of makes a best guess about, what's right. So what this manifesting that I write in the book and that a lot of people do should really, I think, be called conscious manifesting. So it's actually taking a hold of your future. I think there's one quote I have in the book, and I'll probably say it wrong. The best way to change your future is to create it. You're the sole creator of your present and your future. Obviously, there's all sorts of stuff happens on around it, but how you respond to that changes what that future will be or how you experience it. So it's about being conscious about that change.
I like your example of being at home in Cavan and coming here, because that almost seems funny to people in terms of manifestation, because you go, it's not particularly glamorous. You went to Dublin for a few hours, big swing. But I guess it could be argued that, well, actually, the big glamorous manifestations, I now work 4 hours a week and I live on a beach, is just an accumulation of small manifestations along the road.
Yes.
And it can look glamorous and magical. Wow, look, your life is completely transformed. That's manifestation. Look at the life I manifested.
Yeah.
But actually, it's a lot of unglamorous steps along the way.
Yeah,
now, sometimes you do have something magical and big happen in your life. But I would guess, am I right in thinking that the best manifestations is conscious manifestation in small parts?
Yeah. So that's absolutely what it is. And the thing about manifesting techniques is they keep you on track. Also, they make it easier to cope with that fear. So the brain loves new information. That's what neuroplasticity is. But the brain also loves the status quo. It loves things to be just as they are because its primary job is to keep you alive. And change comes with a risk. And so you have this constant tug of war between, no, everything's just okay, don't rock the boat, and God, I'd really love to do that. Am I brave enough? So just acknowledging, understanding that is just part of the human condition. Yeah. Your brain is just trying to keep you safe, but also your brain is really hungry for new experiences. And the more new experiences you give your brain, the more resilient you become. So the more challenges you actually face and take action on, the better your brain is able to cope with any future challenges. So there is that tug of war.
I like that. It's reassuring that if you do feel discomfort along the way,
absolutely,
that it's
because you're human.
Friction. Yeah.
It's just because you're human. That's the way it is, you know?
Clarity is next. And that is a tough one. I think it's a tough one for me. It's a tough one for a lot of people. We have an idea of what it is we want, but sometimes it can be quite difficult to really zoom in.
Hone in on it.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the self-awareness really pays off.
Okay.
So that I would call that second step, the connecting with yourself, a self-awareness step. And really what I would see as the ultimate goal around gaining clarity about what you want is, if you are more self-aware, you are more likely to discover what is your true passion. You know, what really gives you that buzz? What is intrinsically motivating for you? So, for example, money is a motivator, but it's not an intrinsic motivator, because a wad of money doesn't do anything. You can use it to buy other things that may be intrinsic motivators or whatever.
But money's a good example, because a lot of people don't think beyond that. They think
they just want the money.
What would you like to manifest? €1 million.
Yeah.
And you think, okay, well...
Just look at all the rich people around the world. Are they any different than you? Are they happier than you? Now, it's very trite to say that in in a society, in a culture where people are struggling to get the food that they eat. And I think it's important to be mindful of that. Money actually does make a difference up to the point where you have enough to eat and feed your kids and do those kind of things. But when you're talking about happiness, the more money you have, there's no relationship. And you just look at, I mean, I always sort of take Robbie Williams as an example. You know, he's super successful, loads of money, really battles his mental health demons over the year. And actually, in fact, I don't think he does as much since he got married and had kids, which is kind of funny. Now, I don't pretend to know, you know, what changed in his life and whether he still has those demons, but the money doesn't solve. And I often think, in fact, if you have the money to do everything you want, you may be more likely to experience those demons, because you go, what the fuck is wrong with me?
Yeah,
you know,
I can't
have
blame
everything.
lack of money anymore.
Yeah, I have everything.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm talking about, is when you have self-awareness, and the amazing thing about when you have self-awareness and you do discover your passion, and what I would call about that passion, I'd call it your joy. It's when you discover that, you are more likely to enter the state of flow, which we spoke about the last time I was on the show. So this, I think, is part of the journey, is getting that clarity about what really motivates you. What is the thing that you do where you completely lose track of time, and you also are at your best in that activity, and that self-critic is just completely turned off.
Yeah.
You are just in there in the zone. And for me, that's what I think, you know, the manifesting is aiming towards, you know, to question yourself till you kind of get that answer. And then you can, and I think often manifesting is spoken about as if it is a one-off journey. It's not. There's multiple journeys. What are you going to do when you manifest that? You need another goal. It's the journey, it's the goal, it's the striving that really actually is what makes us happy. We have something, we want meaning in our life, and working towards a goal gives you that meaning. Yes, when you achieve a goal, there's this brilliant high, you feel amazing, but actually then it plateaus. Do you know?
Yeah.
And it drops off. So you don't stop. It's like, oh, well, then I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. And I've found that over my lifespan, you know, that there isn't, I've had multiple different careers, and I've striven to a certain, is that a word, striven? I strived, you know, and I've achieved certain goals, and then I've kind of go, oh, okay, what can I explore next? And I think that's what makes for a really interesting life. And I think the structure of our society sort of doesn't speak to that. It's almost like you go to school, you go to university, you get a job, you do well in your career, you have, you know, you find a partner, you have kids, then you retire and do nothing. Bullshit. You can deviate from that journey. And I think it's that I kind of, in the self-awareness, want to get people to start thinking outside that box of following a path.
Hustle culture, or grind culture, as it's called.
Is that what it's called?
It doesn't allow, it doesn't, almost doesn't stop. It doesn't take a breath to allow for meaning and purpose.
Space in your head.
Yeah.
Space in your head.
It's just go, hit the milestones, climb the ladder, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Be at the best company, have this many kids by this amount of time.
Whatever direction you're going, it's just stop, think. And that the appointment with yourself is one of the most important things. And then also a thing that you can do is, I did it about 2017. I know the year because I had a big life-changing event, and literally, made a list of all the things I do, all the things I am, and opposite it, put why do I do it and how much do I love doing it. And there was loads of shit I could just cut out, and I did.
Yeah. Did you see when you'd written it down?
Oh my God. You go, why am I doing that? Now, there's some things that you don't like doing and you don't love doing, but, the guilt of not doing it, if it's to do with relatives or doing things, is too much. So, you can't throw everything out, but you certainly can cull that down. And that's for me, that gives you a core of, what gives me meaning and purpose? What do I love? And it's a simple exercise. You just can't let anyone else look at what you've written down because you have to be honest.
They may be implicated.
Coherence.
Coherence.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I think that is probably one of the harder things, and it's also where some manifesting tools and techniques help out. So people who are familiar with manifesting will be familiar with the term alignment. Having your thinking, feeling, behaving aligned. Alignment just doesn't begin with a C. Coherence does. So that's the honest to God truth why I called it coherence. But it means the exact same thing.
And they help us to remember them.
Help you to remember them.
So it is helpful.
So it really is about ensuring that your thinking, your behaviour, your emotions are aligned not just with your manifesting goal, but also with your true values. And they're the things that you discover when you engage in that self-awareness. And I kind of hope, I keep going back to that, but they are foundational to every other part of the journey. If you haven't identified what your values are, what's important to you in life, what line you'll never cross. If you don't know that about yourself, you're going to run into trouble later down the line, because you might discover, oh God, if I want to be, that movie star, I actually would have to give up looking after my mum or doing so, and I couldn't do that. Do you know? So that the self-awareness part of it really helps along the line. So coherence is really, really hard. And again, because we're constantly pulled between, we have amazing capacity as humans for rational thinking and rational behaviour. Goal-directed behaviour, which is what manifesting is, right? So we know that if I do A, and this speaks to what you were talking about earlier, if I do A, B, C, and D, I'm going to achieve my goal. Simples. Except it's not, because the other part of your, not the other part of your brain, because your brain is driven by impulse. And those unconscious parts, so that's conscious, rational, unconscious, reflexive, behaving is impulsive. It's all about immediate satisfaction. And manifesting is about attaining a long-term goal. So what happens along the way is we keep getting distracted, by these immediate satisfaction moments that don't take us a step closer.
Would this be a basic example? I want to lose 2 stone and I want to be super fit and run that marathon next year, but I'm eating a big slice of coffee cake every morning with my cup of tea.
Absolutely, because I don't like coffee cake, but I'm eating that chocolate biscuit because I just want it now, And I mean, exactly, I'm actually really do need to lose 2 stone at the moment that I gained. It's that thing of I get sidetracked by that impulsive pleasure thing. And I write about it in the book, actually, I mean, I manifested, as I said, this amazing grant. I didn't visualize. I used an Excel file. I did visualize. I'm a very visual person. Before we'd even moved into the house, I knew what way I was going to decorate rooms and do those things. That comes really naturally to me.
So this was one of your dreams. You wanted to change up the way you lived. You were going to move from the city to a county you'd never lived in and have the kind of
I had no idea where it was going to be.
Okay. But you wanted a country experience.
I had a very, very clear Excel file. I'm a queen of Excel, right? I literally must be within an hour of Dublin Airport. I travel for work to give talks. My husband travels for work. Must be near water. I grew up beside the sea. Must be either a magnificent modern house, spectacular architect designed, or a period house. Must have gardens, must have big gardens, because I was hankering for that. Must have no neighbours nearby, because we had a nasty neighbour that we wanted to move from. And I don't mind saying this because he's nasty to our neighbours who were left behind as well. So I had a list that went on and on and on. So I'll tell you my little manifesting story, which is a little bit like your one of the truck.
Okay.
And basically, I had my list, knew what we wanted. Our kids have grown, we lived in you were in my house in Clontarf also.
Yes.
It's a really, really nice house, and I had my podcast studio at the back, but things started to change. People started to build in their back gardens. We actually had an orchard on one side and 200 old trees on the other, and over the years we'd lived there, people started building in back gardens and stuff like that, and it lost a little bit of its charm, and our kids had moved out. And we'd done everything. We'd extended it, we'd done everything to it, and I was even looking at, ask next door, would they sell us a bit of their garden or whatever? I was hankering after that. Anyway, we made the decision, we'll go looking. And I really didn't see very many houses because I loved my house. So we saw one down in Wicklow, and we thought it was it. It had a view of Blessington Lakes, and I thought, right there. It had 2 acres, but they were just 2 acres of fields. Anyway, we got caught up in the impulsive moment and we put a deposit down on it and we were going to move. And this is where I think visualization really, really helps. As I said to you earlier, I love interior design. I love visualizing. I'm very visual in that regard. I can imagine you knock this wall down, you put it, and Dave, my husband, looks at me and go, I haven't a clue what you're talking about. And then it's done and he goes, now I see how it would work. Anyway, I began visualizing living in it and what we would do. And then I started saying, I want trees. I really want trees. I can't get trees. I can't buy a 200-year-old tree and plonk it in my garden. I want to be able to walk my dogs off a lead. There's sheep there. The farmers could shoot my dog. So I started getting these niggles, and kind of going, but we had promised. And again, that's something I've learned about myself from that journey is if I say I'll do something, I'll do it. So I was struggling with that. No, I've told these people I'm going to buy the house. Shit, I better go through with it, which is stupid in hindsight. Yeah. Really stupid. But that's one of my values. I'm a person of my word. I will do that. I've now learned that actually sometimes that's not the best thing to do. It's not in your best
you're
interest.
allowed to change your mind.
Very long story short, it was over the summer. They had told us we didn't have to tell them, we didn't have to close the deal till the end of September. We were having bids on our house. They came in, long story short, they pulled out of the deal. I felt this huge sigh of relief because I didn't have to be the person who was pulling out, but it worked out. So I said to Dave, look, I'm just going to restart and I'm going to go back and look at a house that I had looked at a couple of years before that started me thinking, I would swap our house for that. And it was a house in Wicklow and it was already sold when I saw the article in the Times. But I love scrolling through houses on daft.ie and all that. I love architecture and interior design. So I said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to read that article again just to remind myself, why am I doing this? And what am I looking for? And I read the article, and at the end of the article, the algorithm from the newspaper knew what I wanted. And it said, this property might also interest you. And it's the house I bought. Now, I could turn around and say, oh my God, I magically made that appear. But because I was constantly looking at houses of a certain type, the algorithm this time in the newspaper said to me, this one's for you. Now, the fact that it was $250,000 more than we could afford, my husband didn't want to go and see it. Yeah. And I said, I have to see it. I know this is right. And I knew when we drove in, and then he couldn't see the house because the house was very dank and old and cluttered. And I could just see how I could transform it. And I said, I don't care. We're having this. And also, we're not paying that other $250,000. And we made it happen. Yeah. And we made it happen, I think, in a way. I kept visiting the guy who was selling the house. And he had done magnificent work on the gardens. And I said, I want to know how these gardens work. I want to know how I'm going to look after this legacy you have created. Yeah. And that is the only reason he sold us the house for less. He said, I know my gardens and my home are going to be cared for by someone who loves it. And it's the sort of place that we're custodians of because it's 200 years old.
Well, I imagine him looking at his window in the morning, opening his curtains and going, that crazy lady's in the garden again. And then the next day he wakes up and you're beside him in the bed.
No.
So anyway, about the shed and the roses, I was thinking, okay, you can have the house.
But it sounds crazy, you know, to say I manifested the house of my dreams. But I talked you through the steps.
Yeah, but
know?
it was active. You followed a plan.
Constantly looking.
You reassessed the things that were important to you along the way.
That's where the visualization, I think, is a really important thing. Just because you think you want something, it's okay to say, actually, I'm halfway there and I think I made a mistake.
Yeah, there's flexibility required.
You have to be flexible.
Yeah.
Have to be flexible.
In terms of the tools you mentioned, finally, I know that, you know, getting organized, writing things down, assessing maybe your own values, spending a bit of time, making an appointment with yourself, as you said. Meditation, visualization, are there any other little techniques?
Meditation and mindfulness, and I do write about them at a good length actually within some of the other chapters rather than the last chapter is, I kind of consider, you know, those things that we've talked about as the steps.
Yes.
And then in the last chapter, I call it create, which is the tools and techniques that you can use that can help. Mindfulness, meditation, absolutely useful. You know that.
Well, they're great for alignment, keeping us on track, controlling impulses that may pull us off track, and I guess cultivating that self-awareness, and because it just adds clarity. And
a contentment. I think a contentment, I think that can kind of keep you sort of more centered. I'm on my way.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I'm kind of doing this. But other things that work, visualization, we've mentioned loads of times. Vision boards is a common thing. But they act as a reminder. It's like that notice on the fridge, you know, buy milk. You know, if you have, I didn't use a vision board, but my vision was going in my head all the time, you know. But a vision board helps. It's that constant reminder to keep you on track. It's like as well, if you talk about the diet thing, you know, if you have a picture of yourself on the press where that coffee cake is, of what you want to get back to, you know, that ideal weight, that just might help you to say, no, I'm not going to unconsciously take that coffee cake. Because usually what happens is when we fall off track, we're doing it unconsciously. It's because we're not consciously monitoring our behavior. So things like vision boards, those visual prompts help. Affirmations really do work.
Sometimes they're poo-pooed affirmations, and that if we say, I'm super confident, I'm the best, that if we don't believe it, it doesn't work.
Yeah. And I kind of get where that's coming from, but I think you can rewire those thought processes. So, you know, if you're saying, it's important not to say wild stuff. You know, affirmations aren't about, you know,
yes, I'm a fighter pilot.
Yeah. It's not about that. But it's, you know, hey, I am okay. I am good enough. I can do this, you know. It's the yes we can of Barack Obama. You know, and God, I miss all his nice talks when you have to listen to. I won't get political. Anyway, but
himself.
But no, they do. They help to encourage self-confidence, and you know, they activate different areas in your brain than sort of negative thought processes.
Is this a good idea? I was thinking of recording myself saying positive affirmations about myself, and then listening to that back on headphones whenever I thought of it.
Yeah, I haven't looked at any specific research on that.
Yeah,
but
is that weird?
I don't think it is weird. I don't know that it is weird. It probably is a bit weird.
Well, because I think audio, I really connect with audio.
Yeah. And
so I think that maybe that might be more effective for me than looking at it on a page or a Post-it note.
Yeah. No, I think as well that is a sort of about understanding yourself, what kind of person you are. And if audio is, I mean, I actually on the way in here, because I'm writing another book about a completely different topic. And so my head is full of that. So actually, I'll be honest, on the way in, I stuck on my audiobook. Sounds really weird, but I had to refresh myself. That information was in there, you know?
Yeah.
But the audio of it kind of reminded me and kicked off, oh yeah, they're all the other things that I'll be talking about. And it just got my brain kind of going.
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with it. I used to do it for my exams actually when I was doing my undergrad degree. I would write, which I always think is why a lot of degrees are more about how good your memory is. Yeah, I mean, obviously you have to understand the stuff first and all the rest, but I went straight from being an actor into an undergrad degree. And so I harnessed one of the things that I was really good at in acting, because we would record 5 episodes a week on Fair City. So you have to memorise all your lines and all the rest. So I harnessed that when I was studying my degree. So I used to write, maybe say there's a possibility that 10 essays will come up. I would write all 10 essays and I would learn them and repeat them to myself. And I used to record myself and then I'd put it in my ears so that I was listening through it throughout the night. So my grade point average for every 3 years was 82.5%. I got first class honours every year. So I think it kind of worked.
I think that perfectionist little girl's still in there.
I know.
I'm going to write all the essays and I'm going to learn them all.
I actually did that. I did philosophy in my first year, right?
Yeah.
And logic, I think, logic is lovely, logic in philosophy. For me, that's how my brain works. It's logical. And I remember it was easy for me. Like physics is easy for maybe your son. Physics I struggle with, but logic was easy. And I think there was 5 questions, and I had them done in a flash. So I did the others as well. Just because I could.
In very neat writing.
In very neat writing,
yeah.
yes.
Sabina, always a joy. Thank you so much. I think people are going to get really excited about what they can manifest in their own lives, and whether they like to light a candle, invoke ancient Indian deities, or whether they just want the beautiful science, or whether they want to mix it all up. The book is perfect. So thanks for chatting to us.
Thanks a million.